Hi everyone. I'm going to talk about dividing decimals, and in a previous video we did this problem here, 3,260. We divided it by 5, and I was just showing you the long division algorithm using whole numbers. But now we want to take this a step further, and we want to use the long division algorithm, only we want to have decimals. So what do? We have to take care of the decimals somewhere. So I'm going to act like I'm going to change this number from 3,260 to 32 and 60 hundredths, or I don't need this 0, 32 and 6 tenths. Okay, so let's do that. We have 32 and 6 tenths, and I'm going to divide that by 5. Okay, so this is asking me 5 times what will give me 32 and 6 tenths. That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for that what here. I don't know what that is. Okay, so I'm going to set the problem up, 32 and 6 tenths, and I'm going to divide that by 5. Okay, and we talked in the previous video about the algorithm, or the mnemonic device, mother, sister, brother, and there was even the dad, but I don't like to use the D part. I just think of it as 3 steps instead of 4. So I have multiply, subtract, and bring down. Okay, so the first thing that I notice in this problem here is that I have a decimal point in the dividend. This is my dividend. This is my divisor. I have a decimal in my dividend, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to automatically bring that decimal up into my problem. So I'm going to bring that right up, keeping it in line, and just bring it right up into my quotient, which is my answer. Okay, so now I can just forget about it. I have 326 divided by 5, so now I'm just going to start the algorithm. First thing I'm going to do is multiply. 5 times what number will give me a number close to 3? Well, that's 0. So now I can go to the two numbers, 32. 5 times what will give me a number close to 32? I'm going to write my 6 down. My 6 has to be over the 2 because I'm asking what is close to 32. So that has to be over the 2 here. So 5 times 6, I've multiplied, that's 30. Now I'm going to subtract. And now I'm going to bring down that 6. I just ignore this decimal point. The decimal point has already been brought up into my answer, and I just forget about it. Okay? Extend that line a little bit. So now I brought down the 6, and now I ask myself, 5 times what will give me a number close to 26? Well, that number is 5. 5 times 5 is 25, so I've multiplied. I'm going to subtract. I get 0. Oh, sorry. Don't get 0, I get 1. And now I have nothing else to bring down. You probably were taught in elementary school that you have a remainder of 1. In middle school, we do not use remainders anymore. We have to keep going until we have no remainders left over, or until I ask for you to round to a certain place. So we have to keep going, and the way you keep going is you have to add that 0. Well, in our previous problem here, we did have that 0 here. Right here we have that 0. I just left it out because we don't need it when we have that decimal here. Okay, so we're going to put that 0 back in, and I'm going to bring that 0 down. So now I can ask myself, 5 times what will give me a number that's close to 10? That number is 2. 5 times 2 is 10. I've multiplied. Now I subtract. I get 0, and there's nothing else to bring down. I could add a 0, but since I have a remainder of 0, I don't have to bring anything else down. So my final answer, 5 times 6 and 52 hundredths, will give me 32 and 6 tenths. The only difference, I still have the digits 6, 5, and 2, just like I had over here in this answer, 6, 5, and 2. But now that I'm using a decimal, I have a decimal in my answer, 6 and 52 hundredths. That's my answer for this. So let's take this one step further. And I'm going to put a decimal in my divisor now. So I still have 32 and 6 tenths, but instead of dividing by 5, I want to divide by 5 tenths. I'm essentially doing the same thing. I'm taking 32 and 6/10, and I'm dividing by 5/10. Okay, so it's still saying 5 times what? I'm sorry, 5/10 times what will give me 32 and 6/10. So in this problem, the first thing that I have to remember is I cannot divide by a decimal. So I can't take 32 and 6/10 and divide it by a decimal. I have to change this decimal into a whole number here. In my divisor, it has to be a whole number. Okay, and the way I do that is I just move the decimal one place to the right to make 5/10 a whole number. So instead of having 5/10, I have 5. But whatever I do to the divisor, I have to do to the dividend. So I'm going to take that decimal point here in my dividend, and I'm also going to move it one place. Whatever I do in my divisor, I have to do in the dividend. I have to be fair here. So once I move it, I'm just going to bring it right back up into my answer, and now I'm going to act like this is 326 divided by 5. And I'm going to use my mnemonic, multiply, subtract, and bring down. Okay, so now I've cleaned it up a little bit. I've got 326. I don't have all those lines and everything. And there's where my decimals are. I've brought my decimal up into my quotient, my answer, and now I can just do long division. So I'm going to ask myself, 5 times what will give me a number close to 32? And that's going to be 6. 5 times 6 is 30. So I've multiplied. I'm going to subtract. 32 minus 30 is 2, and then I'm going to bring down the 6. Okay, 5 times what will give me a number close to 26, and that number is 5. 5 times 5 is 25. So I've multiplied. I need to subtract. That gives me 1. And now I need to bring down, but the problem is I have a remainder again, and I can't have a remainder. So I can add a 0 here and bring down that 0. So now I brought down the 0. Now I multiply again. 5 times what gives me a number close to 10? And that number is 2. 5 times 2 is 10. I subtract. And now I get a remainder of 0. There's nothing else to bring down. And I do not, if I wanted to, I could add a 0 here, but I don't need to. So I don't need to do it because there's no remainder, so I'm done. So my final answer of 5/10 times 65 and 2/10 will equal 32 and 6/10. So that's my final answer. Thank you. See you later.